Hello, my name is Monica Kamanjur. This video is the recording of a PUM remote advice coaching for the Kousba municipality in North Lebanon. The topic is vermicomposting for small farmers in order for them to use the organic waste of their farm for the benefit of the soil. The coaching consists of weekly video conferences in August and September 2024. This is the last video conference, and it is about tips for application. Before I do that, I go back to have a look at the microbes biodiversity for composting, because I think it's interesting to keep that in mind when you do the application. These circles that I took from Dr. Johnson, I shown them before, they represent normal composting situations, not the fancy composting that I discussed lately with hyperthermophilic composting followed by dry aeration. No, here we see what is happening in a compost pile bin, as I discussed in the first and second and all around video conferences. And what you see also with this in these circles is the impact of seasons and environmental temperatures, because the pile was made first in summer or maybe in early autumn. So 4 weeks later, the environmental temperature is likely to be still over 18 degrees Celsius, which means that the worms and the mesophilic microbes are very active. But the compost is not completely ripe. Some types of microbes are much more active than others. After 22 weeks, which is about 5 months, it is probably winter. It is cold. Environmental temperatures have dropped below 18 degrees Celsius, and we call this the semi-psychrophilic phase for the microbes. And although the colors with the big numbers are the same, they do not represent the same type of microbes. The colors are just picked because the largest number is blue and the next is orange and the next is gray, but they are not the same types. I can come back to this in the next slide. Anyway, after 6 weeks, which is 14 months, and that will be late autumn next year, then you have this large biodiversity as you see on the right. So in conclusion, to arrive at the microbial biodiversity, it takes at least 9 months and maybe preferably over a year of seasonal changes to arrive there. And that must include a cool period for what they call the semi-psychrophilic stage. Okay, difficult word. The semi-psychrophilic phase, in short, winter. There you have the decomposition, the further decomposition and microbe transformation of the complex structures. You've already seen previously that at the lower temperatures, they are in particular the complex structures that are decomposed. And what they do there is that the contaminants that were deactivated in the thermophilic phase, which was 55 to 70 degrees, in this phase, when it's very cool, the microbes that are most active now decompose further these structures. So the residues of pathogens and insect eggs and herbal seeds, as well as from pharmaceuticals and chemicals and bioactive substances, are further decomposed. And also the peroxide content is reduced, and peroxide also may be a toxic byproduct of this decomposition. Besides, these microbes produce protective bioactive substances. Think, for example, of inhibitors of harmful insects and insect eggs. Also, vaccines and antibiotics may be produced against the pathogens that they encountered. The amounts that they produce are not very high, it is not very concentrated, but they are there, and they may help the crops in the next year. Furthermore, structures containing iron, copper, zinc and phosphorus are also processed, and in this phase the fungal growth in the soil is very much supported. Okay, so when you use ripe compost, and now I talk about compost of 9 to 12 months, or maybe even longer, when you take a handful of this compost, you see all kinds of structures in it. Here in the next slide, it's even clearer that when you take ripe compost in your hands and you open it, you see fungal mycorrhiza hyphen. I made a point of it that you see this white line, that is mycorrhiza hyphen that can attach to the roots of your plants in the soil. Okay, so this very ripe soil you can apply any time of the year, including in late autumn or winter when crops are not growing. This is because ripe compost is neither soil nor fertilizer in the sense that people perceive fertilizer, because it will not raise the soil, but it will slowly disappear after application. It cannot over-fertilize your crops because the nutrients are attached to the microbes, and it will not leach out in winter either, because the nutritive elements are in the microbes. Worms and other soil life will pick up the nutrients for part and take it down in the soil for their winter rest, and so that it's already there before the next season starts. The additional advantages of applying in late autumn is that late autumn composting may also allow for cropping twice in the next growing season with few or even without additional fertilizer, so you will not need to disturb the soil again. Ripe compost is usually a scarce product. You never have enough of it. So economize the use of the compost, for example, by top dressing in the rows. Use it in the rows as close as possible to the plants. Focus on where the plant roots are. However, beware not to make volcanoes. I come back to these volcanoes later. By top dressing the existing roots and the soil life is not disturbed. It is meant to replace what is removed by the plants you have grown. So usually 2 to 3 centimeters is sufficient. You can also use it while planting, both in autumn and in spring. The closer to the roots that you apply the compost while planting, the more useful it will be for the new plant. So much for very ripe compost. Now about the compost you make much faster, in 4 to 12 weeks. You can apply this in autumn or in winter for continue the composting, for example, in a winter bed. But during the rain and growing season, it may be very useful for mulch applications. The nutrient uptake by the plants may be delayed compared to ripe compost, and it also depends on the soil quality, in particular the carbon quality of the soil. If you have very fast compost, for example 4 weeks compost, do not store it because it may heaten up again with thermophilic microbes, or it may even turn anaerobic, and then it's a waste. So unless the compostability is guaranteed, you better apply it directly in a mulch or a bedding system. We talked a lot about compost ripeness, and here, just for the sake of it, I give you a simple farm test for testing the compost ripeness. Fill a container, for example, just a small butter dish with the test compost, and do so about 100 crush seeds. And you keep it moist and nice at a nice temperature for about 7 days. Indoors, of course, put it in your kitchen somewhere. And check the results. If all the seeds are germinating nice and green, it's an indication that the compost is ripe, or at least sufficiently ripe. The compost will smell like forest floor, it will be crumbly, and it can be used for any cultivation, as I just told you. If seeds are not germinating or seedlings are turning yellow and brown, it means that the compost is still too young. It's pre-compost. It can be used in mulches, as I go further into below, or it should be allowed to ripen further, for example, in a compost bed. Okay, applying pre-compost in a mulch. Take, for example, pre-compost from the tumbler 4 to 12 weeks. So this is a type of compost where there are no worms inside. You can use it in a mulch, for example, at the start of the growing season in fields or gardens where trees, shrubs or perennials are grown. In these areas, you expect worms to be in the ground and do their job over there. You can mix the pre-compost from the tumbler, for example, with 20 to 40 volume% chopped brown materials to attract the worms and other life from the soil, and mix it with about 20 volume% of clean soil, or mix it in within the soil, as I will show you in a few slides. Beware, however, that the brown materials that are added, they require extra moist. So you need to water the mulch regularly by rain, irrigation system or hose spray. And respect the 3 basic rules that there are for applying mulch. Here the first rule: roughen up old mulch layer before adding the new one. Here you see somebody busy with a hand machine, and it is good to do it by hand if you have trees or perennials like this, because you do not want to disturb the plants or its roots. Secondly, don't make volcanoes. I already mentioned the word. Keep mulch 15 to 20 centimeters clear from trunks and stems, and that is because you want to keep it moist. and then the bark may rotten underneath. Here on the left you see a volcano, and on the right a bark that is infected because of all the moist that has been there for a long time. And thirdly, another laborious activity is to spread the mulch and you have a mulch layer well. The maximum mulch layer depth is about 5 to 7 centimeters, the old layer that you roughened up, plus the new layer. Here again, this is something you like to do where there are trees, shrubs and perennials, and make sure that you don't disturb the plants and their roots. Okay, liquid manure revisited. Because liquid manure, we discussed it the last time, but fresh liquid manure, it can also be used in a mulch system if it is mixed with manure compost of an elevated carbon-nitrogen ratio. It can be very successful. I hear from many farmers. So you work it in the upper layer of about 5 centimeters of the soil. That is, for example, if you have a field where you want to grow a new crop, then you can put it in with a machine. You need to do that to prevent the loss of nitrogen and minerals of the liquid fraction. You want that for the benefit of the soil and your plants. Please pay attention to if there are high concentrations of pharmaceuticals, for example, anthelmintics and anti-tick medicines in the liquid manure. To that extent, it is a bit of a side remark, but I know that scientific research has identified several non-chemical products to control helminths and ticks. Usually they are from herbal origin. However, please do not take any herbal mix from the internet, because there is a lot of cheating going on for a lot of money. Among the references, I have the Natural Livestock Farming International. This is an association of veterinaries and veterinary researchers who do some of this innovative research. Unfortunately, innovation research in this field is slow for lack of investments, and that is because many chemical and pharmaceutical factories are not interested to do the investment. So it's sometimes very difficult to allocate the money. Anyway, from the mulching, we continue to the storage. If you want to store compost and vermicompost through the winter, where do you do that? You do it in a shady, cool, well-ventilated place protected from the rain. For example, in the pile bin, the one that you are already very familiar with, a cover or a lid. Here on the far left, you see a traditional compost pile system, and they made a lid to cover it up for the winter. In the center, you see a bin and a garbage container. They will also serve very well. Please remember to drill some holes in the sides for ventilation. The advantage of a garbage container, as is shown over here, is that you can roll it around it in your field or in your garden and take it to the place where you want to apply the compost. And of course, you can store compost in bags with woven material where it is dark anyway, but you can also store it in plastic bags with some ventilation holes You keep it in a dark barn, but like this, for example, as you see on the right photo on the right, it looks nice for sales. Compost and vermicompost can therefore best be stored shady, cool and dry, but not dusty, with a moist percentage of 45 to 50%. What means dry, not dusty? Here you can see it looks dry, but when it falls from the shovel, there is not a lot of dust flowing into the air. That's the right humidity. You apply a vermicompost best in spring and the growing season. Actually, vermicast, the worm secretion, is not a manure for scientific reasons because worms have an inverse column system. If you're interested in that, there is a lot of information on Wikipedia about it. However, unfortunately, for legal reasons, it is sometimes called administrative manure. I don't like it, but it's done. Of course, if real manure has been fed or added, then of course there it will be manure present. Vermicast is very rich in microbial nutrition. It is supporting the fast growth of plants. So, and it's a very fine compost. Therefore, it is recommended for delicate and annual plants. Apply it, for example, in horticulture and kitchen gardens. In particular, watery vegetables, annual crops can profit from it very nicely. Okay, vermicompost is therefore very useful, for example, as a mix for seedlings that you grow in early spring already. Can also be used for soil preparations. Here you see a soil preparation in a kitchen garden, and it is applied to the bed where that is prepared. A very useful moment to apply it is as a side dress when the plants are already coming up. And I like to show this slide because here straw is used as a source of carbon to cover the soil when the plants are coming up, and vermicompost is added very economically as a side dress to the plant. Don't over fertilize it with vermicompost. You do not need to do it, and it's a very expensive material. Okay, fine compost or vermicompost can also be diluted for irrigation or in drone spraying. 1 or 2 kilos of fine compost or 1 kilo of vermicompost is enough already for about 1 hectare of crops. The compost of vermicast should be stirred very firmly to allow the microbes release in the water. You stir it and you add oxygen to keep these conditions aerobic for the microbes. Especially when it's stuck to other materials or to soil, firmly stirring is important. You use it right after the preparation to remain the aerobic state. Compost tea can even be applied, for example, every 2 weeks on the crops. Here I have a photo where I was present at a demonstration, because you do not need much vermicompost. As I said, 1 kilo may be enough for an application on 1 hectare for 2 weeks. spraying with a drone might be a very a good idea. Here you see a drone with the content of 25 liters where the compost is diluted. In reality, the spray was given to a hectare of Brussels sprouts, but here I was at a demonstration day and they used a cornfield where I could see the demonstration. And there was another very small drone at the side for a camera because they recorded the whole demonstration. And this is a way where you can very finely spray small amounts of vermicompost over a whole hectare of field. Okay, a final look at this table about vermicompost spraying. As said, vermicompost has a very low fungal bacterial ratio because you only supported the bacteria in the worm beds. And this material is therefore very good for mid grasses and vegetables because they do not require that much fungi. When you think about annual crops and young seedlings, they are still small and have to develop for themselves. Okay, you have seen this a lot of times. I continue fast to the next one, which is the summary. The summary about the application. Okay, in general, the riper the compost, the more varied the options for application. Ripe compost that has sustained a cool season and which is about 9 to 14 months old, it feeds the soil life best. Soil life can next feed and support and protect both plants and soil fungal growth. If it is administered in late fall, it is also already available in the soil for the entire next season. But mind government regulations because they may be a bit awkward. But you can use this every time throughout the year. Pre-compost that may or may not be solidly stable because of its fast processing should not be applied in late fall because it is not ready for that. Fast produced compost may not be an asset for all applications, but it can very well be used as in a mulching situation around perennials, trees and shrubs. If you use it in a mulch, it is best administered during the rain or growing season because you want to keep the mulch moist. Vermicast, thirdly, is a very biodiverse and very fine compost. It is very rich with microbes and therefore an excellent material for using for seedlings, delicate plants, annual crops, fast-growing crops in horticulture. And both fine and very ripe compost, as well as vermicast, are also excellent for use as a compost tea. You can use it in an irrigation system, and they are very well for using in a drone spraying application system for finely composting your crops. Okay, overall conclusions over all the video conferences that I gave. Vermicompost after ripening in an aerated pile is very little labor requiring, and that's why I recommended it so much. It is even less labor requiring than a classic non-aerated windrow system. It is best applied throughout the year, anytime you like, but if you do apply it in late autumn, it will enrich the soil and reduce the pressure of pest in the next year. You can use it in the soil-adapted carbon-nitrogen ratio, ranging from 25:1 up to 75:1, depending on the fungal bacterial ratio that you want. Pre-compost, that is fast-made compost, requires the most labor when it is after that used in a mulch application, because already making the pre-compost requires labor. Either in the hand tumbler it requires labor, and if you have machines for it, it requires energy. Then in the application, in mulch application, it requires labor as well, because you need to roughen up the soil and spread out in the mulch very well. It is best applied during the rain or growing season to keep the mulch moist. And it is very helpful because it will increase the production very much. It is best applied in the fixed cultures. Think of trees, shrubs and perennials, where there is already a high fungal bacterial ratio in the soil, because the roots remain in the soil. So a low carbon nitrogen ratio is sufficient in this pre-compost. Usually it is made 25:1. And when you apply it in the mulch, mix it a bit with brown materials to attract worms and soil life, and mix it also a bit in with the soil when you apply it. Vermicompost, on the other hand, no, not on the other hand. Vermicompost production is also very labor, attention and investment requiring. But when you put in that investment, you get a very fine, very nice, microbes-rich product. This product is best applied at delicate plants, seedlings, kitchen garden crops, and in horticulture. So fast-growing plants. A moderate carbon-nitrogen ratio is sufficient. The advice is, depending on the crops that you use it for, 25:1 to 35:1, because these type of crops are tolerant for low fungal bacterial ratios. Never forget your records book. I keep on reminding you, because in this type of work, I promise you, you will forget. So please have a records book, note the dates, what you do, note the amounts that you use, note your observations and note your interventions. And it will be very nice if you can discuss this with your peers so you can learn from each other. And then finally, I have thought about what book can I recommend if you buy only one book about vermicomposting. I recommend The Worm Farmer's Handbook, written by Rhonda Sherman, an American lady, because this book contains all the ins and outs of vermicomposting, from worm bins to large and middle scale, for farms, for businesses, schools and institutions. It talks about any subject that you want concerning vermicast, production systems, making beds, harvesting, packaging, storing, marketing the worms and the vermicast, keys for success, however, the regulatory issues that are discussed, these are applied for the United States. It may be different in your country. However, I still think that this, if you buy one book, this is the best book you can buy. Okay, so thank you very much for all your attention. And it has been a long time, many weeks of video conferences and discussions. If you still have questions, please write me an email and I will reply to you. Thank you very much and hope to see each other one day.